What if I told you that moving in together might be the fastest way to kill your relationship? For the modern, independent woman, the traditional shared address is no longer the ultimate goal. We are redefining intimacy by choosing separate front doors, proving that you can have a soulmate without sacrificing your silence. That idea might make you pause, because for decades, we were taught that love follows a very clear path. You date, you get serious, you move in, you combine closets, you merge routines, you share keys. That's what commitment looks like. That's what progress looks like. But somewhere along the way, many women over 40 started asking a quieter question. What if I don't want to share my space again? Not because you don't want love, not because you're afraid of commitment, but because you've finally built a life that feels peaceful. You've arranged your furniture the way you like it. You've created evening routines that restore you. You've learned how much silence you need after a long day. And the thought of giving that up feels heavier than it used to. If you've ever caught yourself thinking, I want partnership, but I don't want a roommate, this conversation is for you. Living apart together, sometimes called LAT relationships, isn't about distance. It's about choice. It's about choosing intimacy without automatically merging households. It's about protecting autonomy while still building something meaningful. For many independent women, especially those who have already lived through marriage, divorce, long relationships, or years of shared domestic responsibility, cohabitation doesn't feel romantic. It feels like management. And that doesn't mean you're cold. It means you're honest about what drains you. This video isn't about rejecting traditional relationships. It's about questioning whether traditional structures still serve you. We're going to talk about the myth that a shared lease equals seriousness. We're going to talk about the invisible cost of cohabitation, the mental load, the friction, the subtle ways romance can turn into logistics. We'll also talk about the luxury of evening stillness, the power of having a door that closes, and how deep intimacy doesn't have to involve arguing about dishes. You're allowed to redefine love in a way that fits the woman you are now. And maybe the boldest act of commitment isn't moving in. Maybe it's refusing to disappear inside someone else's routine ever again. For a long time, a shared key was considered proof that the relationship was real, proof that you were serious, proof that you were moving forward. If you didn't move in together after a certain amount of time, people would start asking questions. Friends would raise eyebrows. Family would hint. Where is this going? Cohabitation became the default setting, not a decision, just the next step. But in 2026, that default doesn't feel as solid as it once did. High-achieving women are more financially independent than ever. Many have already built careers, purchased homes, raised children, or rebuilt their lives after divorce. They're not looking for rescue. They're not looking for someone to split rent. They're looking for connection. And connection doesn't automatically require a shared address. The shared key myth assumes that intimacy grows from proximity, that being in the same space constantly deepens the bond. But what many women discover, especially after 40, is that constant proximity can also create constant responsibility. If you're a woman who has already carried the mental load in past relationships, you know what that means. Remembering groceries, tracking appointments, noticing when things need to be cleaned, anticipating needs, managing moods. You might love your partner deeply, but the domestic layer changes the dynamic. The romantic energy can slowly shift into administrative energy. And for a woman who has spent years balancing work, life, maybe children, maybe caregiving, the idea of adding another shared household can feel like returning to a role you've outgrown. Choosing separate spaces isn't necessarily fear of commitment. It can be preservation of self. It can be saying, I want you in my life, but I don't want to lose my rhythm. There is something powerful about having your own home, your own sanctuary, your own version of order. No negotiations about thermostat settings, no quiet resentment about who left, what where. For many women, that independence isn't coldness, it's hard-earned peace. The myth of the shared key suggests that if you don't merge fully, you're holding back. But maybe what you're actually doing is protecting what makes you whole. You can love someone and still need your own space. You can commit deeply and still close your own front door at night. And questioning the default doesn't make you less devoted. It makes you intentional. Let's talk about something that doesn't get said out loud very often. Living together sounds romantic in theory. Shared mornings, shared dinners, falling asleep in the same bed every night. But over time, what quietly grows isn't just closeness. It's logistics, and logistics can drain chemistry faster than anything. When two adults share a home, someone usually carries more of the invisible work, tracking what's running low, planning meals, noticing what needs cleaning, remembering birthdays, managing emotional temperature, anticipating conflict before it explodes. If you've lived with a partner before, you already know what I'm talking about. It's not just physical chores, it's the mental load. And for many women over 40, especially those who've already done this once, the thought of picking that role back up feels exhausting. This isn't about saying men are incapable. It's about acknowledging patterns. In many heterosexual relationships, women still end up default managers, even when both partners work full-time, even when things look equal on paper. Weaponized incompetence is real. The forgotten laundry, the selective confusion, the quiet assumption that you'll notice what needs doing first. Over time, that dynamic chips away at desire because it's hard to feel romantic towards someone you feel responsible for. Add to that the simple reality of constant proximity. When you see each other every day in sweatpants, arguing over bills, navigating small irritations, something shifts. The spark that once came from anticipation becomes routine. You stop choosing time together. You just share space. And for an independent woman who values her autonomy, her focus, her career, her creative energy, that constant merging can feel like dilution. Many women quietly admit that after cohabiting, their relationship felt more like partnership management than passion. Living apart together isn't about rejecting love. It's about removing friction. When you don't share a sink, you don't argue about toothpaste caps. When you don't share a laundry basket, you don't silently resent folded shirts. When you don't share daily micro decisions, you preserve your energy for deeper connection. Some women are realizing they'd rather meet their partner as a chosen guest than a permanent fixture. That doesn't make the relationship weaker. Sometimes it makes it cleaner. You trade the comfort of a roommate for the clarity of a sanctuary, and that clarity can keep resentment from quietly building underneath romance. It's not about avoiding intimacy, it's about protecting it. There is something deeply grounding about walking into your own space at the end of the day, closing the door, exhaling, not negotiating what happens next. For many independent women, especially after 40, that stillness is not a luxury. It's regulation. After a full day of meetings, responsibilities, conversations, maybe parenting or caregiving, your nervous system needs decompression. Silence, control, predictability. When you live alone, your environment is entirely yours. The lighting, the temperature, the music, the mess level, the pace. You don't have to perform. You don't have to adjust. You don't have to consider someone else's mood before you choose yours. And that level of control does something powerful. It speeds emotional recovery. It preserves creative focus. It allows you to process your own thoughts without interruption. For women who have spent decades accommodating others, that solitude can feel revolutionary. Living apart together protects that stillness. You can spend intentional time with your partner, deep conversations, shared dinners, trips, intimacy, and then you return to your own space. You reset. You recharge. You don't lose yourself inside someone else's rhythm. In 2026, mental health isn't a side note. It's survival. The world is loud. Work is demanding. Information never stops. Your home should feel like sanctuary, not another shared project. For many women, the idea of giving up their independent home feels heavier than the fear of living alone. And that says something important. It says that personal space is no longer negotiable. It says that love can exist alongside autonomy. It says that commitment doesn't require surrendering your peace. Having your own front door means you choose when to open it. And that choice changes everything. You're not together because you have to be. You're together because you want to be. That subtle shift transforms the energy of the relationship, from obligation to intention, from default to desire. And for a woman who has finally built a life that feels balanced, that difference matters more than ever. One of the biggest misunderstandings about living apart together is that people assume it creates distance. They think intimacy requires proximity, that sharing a bathroom automatically equals emotional closeness. But intimacy isn't built by default. It's built by attention. When you live together, time together can become background noise. You're in the same room, but you're both scrolling. You're in the same house, but you're both tired. You're technically together, but you're not necessarily connected. Living apart changes that dynamic. When you plan to see each other, you choose it. You prepare for it. You show up differently. You're not bumping into each other between chores. You're meeting intentionally. That shift alone can protect romance. Without the constant domestic tasks woven into your connection, the energy stays cleaner. You're not arguing about who forgot to take out the trash before you sit down to talk about something meaningful. You're not managing household friction before trying to be affectionate. You get to arrive as partners, not co-managers. That doesn't mean challenges disappear. Every relationship has conflict, but the type of conflict changes. Instead of arguing about whose turn it is to clean the fridge, you're focusing on how you feel about each other, on communication, on growth. The mundane tension that slowly erodes desire is reduced, and something else happens too. Mystery stays alive. When you don't see someone in every version of their day, you maintain a bit of intrigue. You're not fully merged. You're still slightly independent. That independence can keep attraction active. You still miss each other. You still look forward to the next visit. You still choose to spend time together instead of assuming it. For women who have experienced long-term relationships where passion slowly turned into practicality, this difference feels noticeable. It doesn't mean you love less deeply. It means you're protecting the space where desire lives. Deep intimacy doesn't require shared chores. It requires emotional presence. And sometimes removing domestic friction makes room for more of that presence. Living apart together can feel less like compromise and more like curation. You keep the parts of partnership that nourish you. You release the parts that drain you, and what remains can feel surprisingly vibrant. Choosing to live separately while partnered can feel bold, not because it's wrong, but because it challenges expectations. Friends may ask questions, family may assume something is off. Society still quietly treats cohabitation as proof of seriousness. So you may find yourself explaining your relationship more than you'd like. That's where clarity matters. If you and your partner understand why the structure works for you, outside opinions lose weight. This is about designing a relationship that supports both people, not performing one that looks acceptable. There are practical considerations, of course. Finances need discussion. Long-term goals need alignment. If one of you owns property and the other rents, how do you navigate that? How do you plan for retirement, for aging, for emergencies? Living apart together isn't about avoiding responsibility. It's about structuring it consciously. Some couples split time between homes. Some live in the same building but different units. Some maintain full independence indefinitely. There isn't one model, that's the point. You're not inheriting a script, you're writing your own. Financially, two households can require intention. But many independent women are already supporting themselves comfortably. Instead of merging finances automatically, they choose flexibility. You can still build a future together. You can still invest. You can still plan long term. The difference is that independence isn't sacrificed in the process. Emotionally, this model requires maturity. You need trust. You need communication. You need to be secure enough to handle space. But many women over 40 are exactly that. They've done the inner work. They know themselves. They value autonomy without fearing abandonment. The deeper message here is simple. Independence is not the opposite of love. For some women, it is the foundation of it. You don't have to shrink your life to make someone comfortable. You don't have to merge everything to prove devotion. You can build a partnership where both people remain whole, and that wholeness can be the reason the relationship thrives. Love doesn't have to look like shared mailboxes and combined closets. It can look like two strong individuals choosing each other again and again without losing themselves in the process. That is not less committed. It is intentional. If you've stayed with me through this whole conversation, I want you to pause for a second, not to decide anything, not to make a dramatic life change, just to notice how this idea makes you feel. Relieved, curious, defensive, seen? Living apart together isn't a rule. It isn't a trend you have to follow. It's simply a reminder that love doesn't come in one approved format. For decades, many of us were handed a sequence. Date, move in, marry, share everything, prove commitment by merging lives completely. And for some women, that works beautifully. But for others, especially women who have built careers, survived divorce, raised children, rebuilt themselves, or simply grown into strong independence, the thought of fully merging again feels heavy. Not because you don't want love, because you don't want to disappear. After 40, something shifts. You know how hard it was to build your stability, your routines, your space, your quiet, your identity outside of someone else's expectations. You don't want to go back to managing someone else's mess while trying to manage your own ambitions. You don't want to lose the evening silence that lets your nervous system settle. You don't want to trade autonomy for optics, and that doesn't make you cold, it makes you aware. This conversation isn't about rejecting closeness, it's about redefining it. Intimacy can exist without shared walls. Commitment can exist without shared closets. Partnership can exist without sacrificing sovereignty. For the independent woman, the real question isn't, what does love require? It's, what structure allows me to stay myself inside love? If living separately allows you to show up more present, more playful, more emotionally available, then it isn't distance, it's design. If having your own front door allows you to protect your mental health, your creativity, your rest, then it isn't avoidance, it's intelligence. You are allowed to evolve past old blueprints. You are allowed to choose a relationship model that supports who you are now, not who you were at 25. And maybe that's the real shift happening in 2026. Women are no longer asking, "What will people think?" They're asking, "What allows me to thrive?" Love does not require you to shrink. It does not require you to merge beyond recognition. It does not require you to sacrifice your silence to prove devotion. You can have a soulmate without surrendering your sanctuary. You can have passion without permanent proximity. You can have commitment without collapsing your independence. At this stage of life, you don't need louder love. You need aligned love. And alignment begins with one simple truth. You are not too independent to be loved. You are simply clear about the kind of love that works for you. And that clarity, that's not selfish. That's powerful. Before you go, I want to invite you to join this community of women rediscovering themselves after 40. If you found comfort, clarity, or even just a moment of peace in this video, please subscribe. It helps this channel grow, and it helps more women find the support they deserve. And if you have a second, leave a like and a comment. I would love to hear what resonated with you the most. Thank you for being here. Truly.